hello, hello. Welcome once again to another edition of Quoth the Raven, Lewis Bright Raven. I'm your host, Lewis Bright Raven, 33-year veteran writer, artist, editor, and publisher of comics, science fiction, fantasy, horror, and role-playing games. And this is December 12th, 2024. And we're going to be talking with my co-host, John Norris, shortly, as well as our guest this week, comic book creator, musician, and animator, Randyl Bishop, who did a little bit of the work on the video you just watched. That now the final version was done by Chris Hall, who was our guest last week, but Randyl was the first person to start working on this, and we'll talk a little bit about his involvement with that video as well. I hope you're all doing well this week. I hope that weather has been not tearing up too much. It's been just kind of rough. And a couple of people have been saying, wishing me well wishes for my cat Midnight. We just found out he had kidney stage 2 disease. He's doing all right. He might show up and make some noise in a little while. You never know with him. But in the meantime, let me go ahead and introduce my guest this week and co-host, John Norris and Randyl Bishop.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, gentlemen, we're going to start this week with talking about Randall's work, The Hawk of New York, as soon as this silly machine that lets me doing what I want to do.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show and giving me this opportunity to talk about the comic.
Oh, no problem. Okay, let's start with this, if it will let me. I don't want a Chrome tab. What am I doing here?
What are you doing there?
Yeah, there we go.
Awesome.
The Hawk in New York. Publisher, Time-Bound Entertainment. Writers are creator Randyl Bishop with Bobby Nash, Will Callaghan, Ricky Zero, and others. Artists are again Randyl Bishop with Peter Palmiotti, Juan Carlos. Is that Quattordio?
Yep, Quattordio. It goes back to Roman times.
And others. Lettering by Randyl, editor Randyl. Street level superhero and supernatural. Does that sound like a good explanation of the genre?
I think so. Yeah, I usually go with like outlaw, but street level superhero, that works too.
Well, we're going to talk about outlaw comics and how this plays into the outlaw comics as well. You started this in 2022, if I remember correctly.
Well, yes, the comic actually came out in 2022 at Heroes Con, and I'm down to just a handful of the first printings, but I foresee a second printing, and I kept the print run pretty low because the inks weren't completely done. So what I'd really like to do with the second printing is get in some of the more
artist edition, so to speak.
Yeah, with the Peter Palmiotti he's been in the industry for a long time, but his last name is probably more famously associated with Jimmy Palmiotti of like Harley Quinn and Painkiller Jane and all that fame. So. Right. It was really great getting him on board for that issue and for the previous one that I did with Mitch Rogers, the Boger, which I've got certain comics with me. I think I have that cover with me.
Yeah, I'll let you show them. I'll let you show them in a little bit.
Okay, I'm anxious and eager.
What it's about: The Hawk in New York is about the rise of a reluctant street-level vigilante with an appointment with destiny. Emerging from a tragic web of events, not traffic, although there is traffic in this.
Yeah, especially the second issue.
Our central character, half American Indian American Eric Warden, is at odds with evil motorcycle gang the Devil Marauders, who have ties to supernatural forces beyond anyone's control. With the help of a handful of friends, can Eric, as the Hawk in New York, stand up to corrupt cops, the gangs, the mafia, and the monsters that prey upon us all. This series frequently features rocking soundtracks available in various media produced by Randyl, Ricky Zero, and other musicians. What's the name of Ricky's band? I forgot.
Well, he's in a handful of bands, but his main effort has been Radio Cult.
Right,
He's
Radio.
He's also involved in a Pure Ed, which is I've got a short backup story in issue 7 that talks about the beginnings of Pure Ed and the lead singers from the lead singer's point of view. Ricky is the bassist for that. But he's also thinking moonlights with, although I might be getting that wrong, but he might be a permanent member or he might just moonlight with the band Mantelpiece, who cut the soundtrack, the concept album for The Hawk of New York. So Ricky and I have been friends for a while now, and it's been very productive. And the guy's a massive talent, very underrated guy.
Okay, well, we'll come back to Ricky a little bit because John's going to want to talk about the music in a little while. But let's continue with what I thought about the books.
Okay.
Overall, I think the comic has a very 1980s underground comics vibe, as some of the so-called outlaw movement, akin to The Crow and Faust and some of the other. Although outlaw movement goes to a little more violence and gore than what you have, it does feel that way for me. There's good characterization with Eric. And again, he has a kind of a Crow feel to him, but you also aim for the Native American anti-violent sentiments, which I appreciate as a Native American myself. It does make for an interesting dichotomy for the character as the character evolves and has to face ever-escalating oppositions as the story progresses. And it also reminds me of 1970 films like The Warriors, Shaft, and Doberman Cop. Are you familiar with Doberman Cop?
I am not, but I'm going to look that up. That sounds awesome.
I'm sure
I am very familiar with The Warriors, and in fact, I watched that movie a couple times when I was doing some research and just trying to get a feel for what had already been done with gangs in New York City and anything along those lines. Because I don't hail from there. I've not actually visited the city. I have to kind of pull my resources where I can,
And artistically, I would say the work is very much of the underground variety. I don't know exactly who your influences are. We'll let you speak on that in just a few moments. But you reminded me of Matt Howarth, and I'm trying to think of his name right now, and I can't think of it. Actually, a little bit of Ed Piskor, but not quite as refined yet.
Well, I'm very much complimented by all of that. I am familiar with Ed Piskor's work, and I didn't go into it with the idea that I needed to make everything look just like what Marvel and DC was doing, and in fact, I wanted it to look different. I didn't. The first couple issues aren't even on the proper aspect ratio. I worked on 9x12 sheets, so all the artwork's a little bit more. The line work is a bit bolder as a result of that. And I think that gives it that garage, made this in my garage feeling that I really wanted for the first couple of issues.
Here he is.
There he
is.
He just has to join us
tonight.
Yeah, he's doing okay, folks. He's just he wants to be fed again, but he already had his new diet, which he seems to really like. When I give him anything else, though, he doesn't. So I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. I'll find out when we see him in the vet. But anyway, I give the regular books, like the ones from the Grease magazine, which we'll talk about the Grease magazine, and we're at start in a moment, and your regular Hawk of New York's. And the first one that I had here, like this, I give those like 3 to 3.5 roughly. But the one that I like the most is the animated version.
That's excellent.
I like this version. It's more all ages, more DCAU style. would like to see this done in a regular comic book size format. I think this would go for a 4 instead of the 3 to 3.5. I think it's just a little bit more refined than the other ones. Now that's not, and I hate to say that in a way because this isn't your art. You've got another artist on this one.
I do. The first story is 100% me, and then it's me trying to draw like the other artists, which is Juan Carlos Cotorio. He hails from Argentina, and I met him through my process of working on the Silvers animated music videos. He just cranks stuff out really fast. He's very reliable and very professional. So I think in Argentina he's a pretty big deal, from what I can gather. I have no way of knowing unless I go there myself, and hopefully I'll get down there someday.
John, have you had a chance to read any of his work?
All I've had the chance to read is the preview stuff that came with the CD. So I don't know if you know this, Randyl. I'm a musician myself.
Oh no, I didn't.
I mostly do community theater and church stuff, but I like all types of music. So I listened to this really without having read the source material that inspired it. But first of all, I have to say I loved this CD. I loved it.
Thank you.
And you mentioned the outlaw movement, and what I got from listening to it, again, not having really read anything, is it really has a rock / outlaw country vibe that I really, really liked. I could, I was just getting some, like I could imagine, Johnny Cash or Waylon Jennings, and maybe even a little Steve Earle thrown in there.
That's awesome.
But and yet, I found it very chill at the same time, especially some of the instrumental tracks, like Crazy Horse's Dream. I mean, you could just put headphones on and just chill out with some of that stuff.
I don't know how indulgent Lewis will allow me to be on this interview, but there are 2 unreleased music videos associated with that album, and I'm willing to show Crazy Horse's Dream. I've got it queued up, and it's kind of a shorter track. So
in a moment we will. First, I want to address this question from Augusta Book Exchange. If someone isn't lucky enough to be able to find The Hawk of New York in your local stores, can they be read online digitally?
The first issue can be read online. I think it's Lulu. I'll give you the link, and then you could, after this is over, can you put the link up where they can find the issue? Yeah. Or maybe I can enter it into the private chat at some point. But yeah, the first issue is entirely free. I used to have them all up on Comixology, and then Comixology, I hate to say it, they kind of screwed everybody when they were bought out by Kindle, I guess, or Amazon. And
Amazon, yeah.
Anyway, they forced you to re-upload everything, and I just haven't done that. I wasn't making a ton of sales through Comixology anyway. So at this point, I'm trying to get a working website. I have a collection of links, but I don't really have a proper website yet, and I haven't. It's been a need that I've had for the past 5 years, but that's on my plan to get them hosted on my website so that people can at least buy them digitally if they can't find them in paper, because the biggest print run is only 1,000 copies. Typically the print runs are a lot smaller than that, but the first 2 issues were 1,000. Actually, first 3 issues were 1,000.
Okay. Well, that was a very good question. I know that stop, kitty boy. You guys can't see him; he's in my lap. But
I do want to point out that question came from Augusta Book Exchange, and it's probably Paul Rogers, who's a great guy, runs the store. You can find copies of my comics in the store. He has a local creators rack, and there's a ton of great books on that are worth checking out, as well as mine. But if you do want a paper copy, that's a good place to go. And it's here in Augusta. And then if they're sold out, you can go to, or even if they're not, you can go to Meemaw Had One, which also has a spinner rack in their store with my stuff on it.
What was the name of that again?
Meemaw Had One. It's an antique store. Used to be on Washington, and now they're behind the Sam's Club.
Meemaw Had One.
Yes.
And where is that?
That's behind the Sam's Club.
No, what town? What city?
Oh, it's in Augusta. It's in Augusta. Or I guess Martinez, maybe. And yes, people from out of town, we do pronounce it Martinez and not Martinez. I don't make the rules.
Well, you know, there's the other one. Meemaw Had One.
Yeah.
I hope it might be M-E instead of M-E-E, but I think that's how it's spelled.
Yeah, I think you're correct. Let me see. Yeah, there's no W. It's M-E-M-A. Had One. Affordable antiques and eclectic decor since 1962, I think. 135 Davis Road. So that's on 135 Davis Road.
Is that in Augusta?
Yes, in Augusta. That's their address anyway. That if people will follow Hawk of New York Official on Instagram, I've got posts up of different places where the books are located. And it changes and it grows and it dies and it's a mess.
That correct?
Yes.
All right. I'll leave that up there for people to read. And he says there's a link to their Facebook page too. So what you're looking at. So there you go. Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and leave that up there for minutes. You also have a website that we're gonna talk about in a bit as well. So
yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean the collected links are it's a link tree at timebound.co. Couldn't get the .com, unfortunately, but I did get timeboundentertainment.com, and I attempted to put that in my name. I'm not sure if that's showing up here on the screen.
Yeah, it is there.
Okay, great.
Here,
but yeah, okay, yeah, awesome. Yeah, that's the store, and then the timebound.co is like my t-shirt shop, where my music is, links to the music videos I've done, an outdated portfolio, different things.
Yeah, we'll go to the .com, and then you have a link to the .co at the .com, so they'll be able to find your stuff.
Yes.
Now, what actually started this project? What inspired you to do this?
Well, when I was a boy, I mean, well, I guess I need to start with what we've already kind of discussed, which was like we talked around it, like the outlaw influences and the Johnny Cash. That's awesome. I'm from Arkansas. Johnny Cash is from Arkansas, so like that's the highest. That was absolutely what I was aiming for. My father was a pro rodeo cowboy, and growing up in rural Arkansas, there wasn't a ton of relatable comic book characters. You had a ton of characters, but for the most part, they were set in either New York City or a fictionalized version of New York City, like Metropolis or Gotham. So you always kind of felt like, well, hey, what about the rest of America? Ghost Rider tapped into that Western vibe really well, especially Volume 1 Ghost Rider. And I discovered that as a kid in an antique store. Or maybe it was a comic shop. I don't know. It was some hole in the wall we stopped at somewhere between St. Louis and Salem, which is my hometown. And it just made a big impression on me. And I kind of realized that some of the things that the radio announcers were saying at my dad's events were coming true, that the cowboy way of life was shrinking, dying, and changing. And the Ghost Rider was sort of like, to me, the embodiment of, well, that's the natural progression of the cowboy, is that the cowboy spirit is now in the spirit of vengeance, Johnny Blaze, to my little brain, you know. So from that, and from my affinity for Batman, and then later on the Crow, I sort of formed a character I called Nighthawk, and I tried selling those comics in high school. I made these little Nighthawk Presents comic books, and used the principal's office to photocopy these books. And later I found an insurance company. And my buddy had, you know, parents that ran an insurance company, and I paid them like 5 cents per page to make copies to print my comics, you know, and stapled them together and sold them for 85 cents. And I thought I was big potatoes. And that idea sort of percolated. I got to college, you know, pursued graphic design, which at the time didn't push you or take sequential art storytelling half as serious as it's taken now. Like, it was a different era, and people were still coming out of that thinking that, well, comics are just for kids and dumb adults, and they didn't see it for the potential that it had, and there was not much respect for the industry writ large in the late 90s. I mean, from my point of view. Okay.
No, you're not wrong. How about the late 90s? I mean, it depends on where you're at in the country.
Yeah, rural Arkansas.
Well, there you go. So that's because they're just backwards in rural Arkansas. But
hey, now wait a second.
I mean, but no, even in the early 90s, I when I was going to Central Michigan, I had a huge row with my art department at my college, particularly the art history teacher, who was like, comics are art, comics are art. I'm like, yeah, okay, you're sitting there, you know, putting
you're going to run into that attitude. Like, even today, you're going to run into that attitude,
right? But well, I'm like, yeah, if you're going to put, you know, what's his name, who paints comic book pages as paintings, I can't think of his name right now, and say that's art, then this is art, because all he's doing is copying the comic book panel and blowing it up on a painting. Yeah,
think so, Roy Lichtenstein, maybe.
Yeah,
he gets accused of that often, I think. Yeah, or he did. You know, he's dead now, but
yeah. But what I'm saying is, if you're going to put that up as pop art and cultural significance, and then tell me comics aren't art, you're gonna get bitch smacked. That's all there is to it. You know.
Yeah, you know, Jack Kirby, I think, was among the first to realize, like, this actually is art. Like, this belongs, you know, with some consideration. And
but so yeah, we had that fight, and because I had that fight, some of the other professors in the school kind of sided with me because the guy was a jerk anyway. And that kind of led to me building a sequential arts program at the school with the assistance of the Kubert School. So yeah, that was kind of like, I understand where you're coming from, because unless you have people who take it to understanding that sequential arts isn't just comics, it's storyboarding for film and television as well.
Yeah. And it's not
that, then the bell rings.
Yeah, and it's not a slam at the university where I went, or any of the great art professors there. They were doing the best they can with the program that was written for them, and I have no hard feelings towards any of them, well, except that one, but I won't get into that.
There's always one.
I'm just going to leave everybody to wonder who that is. No, in all seriousness, like, I have no hard feelings. It was overall, I mean, pretty good experience. I ended up going back to the university and going active duty. You know, this was when, you know, the 9/11 happened, and I was in the reserves throughout college anyway. And then, like, everything changed, you know, as for everybody that, you know, after that tragedy. So I knew, like, well, probably I'm going to go to the front. You know, there's going to be some kind of deployment at some point. And I narrowly missed a deployment and got I had been trying to become an officer at different points throughout my college career. And I finally had an avenue that allowed me, like, the third time was the charge. The third time I applied for a scholarship, I got it. And things turned around for me. And then like a month later, the unit that I trained with for 7 years gets deployment orders. And so they're all going and I'm going to college. And I'm like, wow. So felt pretty bad about that until I got my own deployment a couple years later. I was like, you know what? That's just the path. Sometimes, like you just you don't really get to pick and choose your deployments or when they happen or any of that. And I'm very fortunate with the way things did. But with all that, with the way things shook out for me, but the way I tell you that as a preface for my decisions and my thought process was, well, I've written some songs. I need to get an album out before I fully go active duty. So, and I should have been like concentrating on my master's. I was on the sly paying a guy for studio time to get recorded. And that's where I met Macrophonic MC, who's on iTunes, a wonderfully talented individual named Jeremy Martin. I collaborated with him as recently as a couple months ago on an indie film called Birdie Kabash, where he lended his voice acting talents. Just incredible, talented dude. But that ended up getting on iTunes. Like the name of the track is Drive On, and it's like 25 years old at this point, or 20 something years old. But it was a lot of fun, and it kind of opened my eyes to like, well, there's a lot more to this than when I first thought. But that album achieved what I wanted it to, which is basically just document the songs I've got written so I can concentrate on my Army career. So by the time I got to Iraq in 2007, 2008, there was all these generators. I mean, that was my mindset was like, I'm going to pursue music. Like I was still kind of drawing, and this was before Facebook, really took off, and you had comic book resources. So I was hanging out on the artist writers thread as Lou Moxon's ghost, or if there's happens to be one of the 100 people that were there tuning in tonight. That's who I was. And I was about
we were just leaving CBR around that time, but I think I remember seeing you.
Awesome. I would post because it's not like you had a ton of other options for your free time in Iraq. And so it was part of my daily like hangout was like, I'll have a tab open for comic book resources, artisan writers thread. And they didn't care, as long as you did your job, you could do whatever. So I went on there and got back in. They had sequential art exercises, and I got back into like, well, what would it be like to work digitally? I wouldn't have to have paper. So I bought a Wacom Cintiq. It was like a 12-inch and started drawing again. There was all this noise pollution in Iraq. So it's the main reason I switched from guitars and music making back to drawing, because it felt like, well, I can't get a clean environment. There was a USO that had some sound rooms and some guitars and stuff, but it was like 2 miles away. And like I get off work, and it's like I'm not walking up there. And then when you're an officer, you say Joe is there, which means like the enlisted people are there, and you have to deal with being a leader and being setting a good example for them. You can't hang out, you can't fraternize. So it's like, I'll just stay in my chew, and I got a few really good recordings out of my chew, but for the most part, they were all awful. But I did meet Adrian McIlroy-Speed, who's a British author, and he had a fully formed script that I discovered after reading a dozen or so scripts, because I wanted to do a full-length comic, but I didn't want to write it. I just wanted to illustrate somebody else's just to see if I could, because I'd done all these 3-page challenges for CBR, and I wanted to see what it was like. I didn't charge him anything, just like, hey, I read it. It's like, this is a very complete script. It's a great world. It's very well written. It needs to see the light of day somehow. So I created Privateer out of his script, and that's like a 33-ish page book that I still have for sale in my store. But it's lasted 3 issues. There is a 4th issue that's been in the works for the past couple of years. They don't seem to be in a big hurry to produce it, so I'm not doing the art. I might end up being letterer or something on that.
Okay, speaking of books for sale,
yes,
this is some of the stuff that he had that you have. Go ahead and read the list.
Okay, yeah, the Silvers is a book that's based on the music videos There was 3 that
we're going to share some of that in a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that I put that up there just as a tie-in to the music videos. I hope to kind of hint at later, but the bestseller to date has still been the Hawk of New York Book and Record set. It's made to look like a I don't know if you can cut it back to me quickly or not, but yeah, it's made to look like the old Power Records sets, but it's actually just a placard which contains issues 1 and issues 2, and then the CD that was the first official soundtrack that had 17 tracks, and 15 different recording artists. So it looks like this. And at the time, I really kind of wanted something that reminded people of the Crow soundtrack, because I think that's one of the best soundtracks out there for a comic book movie. But I'm on 2 of these tracks, and then I got some of my old college band buddies to participate. And then that's actually where I met Ricky Zero, who was with and still is with Gentleman Records.
Go ahead and show that. Go ahead and show that again. The other side. The other side. There you go. There you guys can see that.
Very cool.
And then go ahead and show the Power Records display too.
Okay. Yeah. Once I met Ricky, he was like, man, why don't you? I was just going to do this little shoebox thing like I did before I left for Iraq, like something I burned myself and sold on the down low, like a pirate, kind of thing. And he's like, why don't you just throw a little bit of money at this and make it professional? Like, I can get you bands. Like, there's like 50 bands on the label. Like, I can get these guys to turn in music that you want. And I had a list of all this different music that I planned to put into the book that was acceptable. So I think I already had issue 1 done when I was talking about this, and I was like trying to figure out what else to put in issue 2, something along those lines. And Ricky's like, well, we've already got this. And he sent it to me. I'm like, well, that's amazing. Like, that's definitely gonna be on there. And then I learned so much, like just talking to him about the whole process, that there's a right way to do this kind of thing and get it out there. Frankly, if I had to do it over again, I probably would just do all original music, because the licensing fees ate up into the profits of this. And sure. I've basically broken even with this. I haven't made a ton of money off of this, but it's mainly because of the licensing that I had to pay, the mechanical license. If I wanted to put this online, and I do, I'd have to pay a different licensing fee. And if I wanted to make a music video with this music, I'd have to pay a different additional licensing fee. And you're just talking like, I don't know if you've seen or follow Weird Al, but he was talking about his Spotify rap video. He was thanking Spotify profusely for something like 80 million plays that he had gotten, and the $12 that he made from it.
That sounds about right.
that's almost enough to buy a sandwich. So thanks for the sandwich.
Yeah.
So if Weird Al is hurting, it's like we don't have a chance. There's no hope for us indie guys. For on the Spotify front.
Okay. Well, again, you have the Hawk of New York issue 2, which is the conclusion of the year 1 storyline.
Yes.
And then issue 3 introduces Doc, who's a longtime friend of Eric.
Right.
Issue 4 is the first appearance of Death Willie, who is a femme fatale.
Yes. And
villainous? Is she a villainous, or is she a kind of a pseudo romantic interest?
She's both. She's like Catwoman before Catwoman and Batman got together. There's no plans of her ever getting together with Eric, but they're gonna flirt, I think. Yeah. But I really do intend to revisit that character in issue 10. Okay. I've got big plans for that issue, and she was in issue 4. She was in and out, and I think a lot of people that have been longtime readers have kind of forgotten about her, which is fine. Like she's
That's fine.
she is an emissary to the Yakuza, the Asian mafia, the Japanese mafia. She works directly for the boss of that crime organization, and she's there monitoring the Devil Marauders, who were chartered by the Yakuza as kind of like a seed organization. They want to edge into the New York City proper, which is mafia, like Italian mafia controlled territory. And the way they're going to do it, they have to get through the Killers gang by proxy of the Devil Marauders. The Devil Marauders are just a bunch of dumb biker guys, but they're not really fully aware what they've signed up for, most of them. So that's a little taste of the world anyway that I'm creating, and
Yeah, that's fine. Issue 5, you get your choice of CDs with it.
Yes. There was a Jack the Radio, which is a Charlotte-based band that's got a pretty good following. They had an existing music video that was very much, it felt like it could be part of the Hawk world. So I approached George, who was the controlling party of the band anyway, and he granted permission for these CDs. They're pretty rare, and I don't think the band's lineup changed after that. And the video used to be on YouTube, and now it's not. So if you want to see the video, that's the only way you can see it now, folks. Like buy that CD and pop it into a disk drive if you can find one that still works, and watch that video, because it's really a blast. And then there's also an Electric Poem CD, which was I think one of Ricky's early projects. That it's a full-length album that features one of the songs that sets the mood for the action-packed issue that follows. And then with issue 6, I wanted to do a crossover. I'd like to do more crossovers. I've done a total of 3 now. And that was with Mitch Rogers, the Boger character, which is this big monster-looking guy here. For fans of Hellboy or Pit, I think this is going to be a good match for your taste. He did quite a bit of the artwork here. I'm trying to find here's like a good Boger glory shot. This is the classic Marvel trope where 2 heroes meet, mistake each other for villains, and then they fight until they, figure out what's what. I won't give away everything.
Yeah. I couldn't find Mitch to invite him to talk a little bit about the Boger with you, but I am familiar with that series.
I think, like the Boger, Mitch likes to lurk. So I don't know. Maybe he's in the audience. Maybe not. I don't know. But he is a mysterious dude. He's very talented, though.
Yeah. But it's let's go ahead and here. So there we go. You've also got the soundtrack by Mantelpiece.
Yes. And I don't have the CD. I don't have an example to hold up, but I do have something better.
I do.
Which is, oh, good. Awesome.
Hold on, John.
I will point out this album is available on Spotify and iTunes, and that's how the band gets paid. I get paid when those physical CDs sell. So if you want a physical CD, pay me. If you want to just pay the band a few pennies so that maybe they can be like Weird Al and afford a sandwich at the end of the year, go to Spotify and iTunes and listen to their music there. But if you don't want to pay anybody and freeload, go to YouTube and listen to it there, because the entire album has been uploaded to YouTube. The official music videos have not, because I want to do a relaunch of the album when those videos are completed. But I am one guy, and those videos take a long time, and the story itself is still in development. So, like, while the songs exist, the story is still somewhat kind of like a little vague in areas, and I will get through it. But I've been saying that for about 7 years now, and I need to get caught up, and it will happen just as long as I live long enough, But
John has a question.
Take it from me, folks. You want this. Trust me. you want this.
Well, can we go ahead and? Well, you got a question. Go ahead, John.
Yes. So, what was it always the plan to have music to go along with the comic, or did?
Yes,
Or
and that is what I thought for years was the single biggest influence of The Crow. The Crow did that beautifully, and I was way more familiar with the movie and the movie soundtrack than I was the comics. I just discovered those much later in college. A roommate introduced me to the book, and then I realized like he's got lyrics, he's alluding to different songs, and I wanted to figure out how to do that and make that a part of my book. And it's an approach that isn't a new one, but it always feels new every time it's done right. And I think at the time I was able to read the tea leaves. I was able to do this right. Since then, it's like it's been limited success or failure, you know. But the first issue was I wasn't prepared for the success it had when I launched it, because at the time, people at conventions anyway were looking for a book just like that one. So that's where the lyrics came from. Now that I've kind of thought about it and maybe educated myself a bit more on what The Crow meant to people, I realized that up until then, there wasn't a basically unknown comic book property that was then made popular by a movie. And that in and of itself gave me hope that, well, hey, maybe Nighthawk can be on the big screen, or maybe he can just be in his own comic book again. So that, to me, it's a very inspiring story. I've met James O'Barr a handful of times. He probably doesn't remember me. That's okay. It's hard to catch creators at their best at conventions. And it's even harder to get them to see you as a person, because they deal with so many people, and the expectations are always really high, and the best are able to sit down, put aside their differences for a few hours for the fans, and treat them with politeness, and just try to listen to them, you know. And sometimes it's very difficult to do that effectively, but I think these creators that have done it so often, like they get to a point where it either makes them or it breaks them. They get really good at it, or it makes them very bitter. And it kind of drives them underground, because it is a lot of working with the public. You know, it is like any other job working with the public. It's gonna leave its mark on you.
If I was sitting in a different chair, I would lower myself under the camera angle, because that's me.
It's everybody. Like it happens to everybody, I think. And I think some people are just better at hiding it than others.
No, I think what it is depending on where you are and how people perceive you. There are so many people online now that want to claim that they know everything about you and what you're about, what your comics are about, and frankly, they don't know jack. And you get so frustrated by that you just, if that's what you're going to represent me as, I don't want to be here.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of it has come. And this started even before social media was a thing. I mean, this was going back really, Wizard Magazine started this with the way they did coverage.
The cult of celebrity kind of started with Wizard, I think.
Yeah. Well, not just the cult of celebrity, but telling you who isn't a celebrity anymore, or would never be a celebrity, because they're not on our radar or whatever. And I think that really hurt the direction of this industry overall, because I think we lost both veteran creators that came before the image partners, and we lost a lot of the independent profiles that we used to get from superior coverage magazines. So, but it is what it is. Let's see. Best value for your money is the big bag of books,
or the big backpack. I should have wrote big backpack of books, but yes.
Okay. And then you've got the animated version, the Hawk and New York Adventures, which is for all ages. and I'm going to go ahead and show that a little.
Oh,
bit.
you've got the Ashcan there, I believe. Is that the Ashcan?
Yes.
Oh, awesome. Very, very limited production at that.
Yeah. Yeah, there was only 20.
Yes. I mean, I did a bit more with the full size edition, but I wanted to get something out. And I wanted to release that with a toy, but the toy wasn't ready yet. I do have a toy that goes along with the series, and there's been 2 basically prototypes made and sold like immediately. And then I have 3 more that I'm going to sell later. They're not ready yet.
So tell them who this is.
Oh, this is Candy Brat. This is a creation of, kind of trifecta, but the bulk of the credit goes to Ricky Zero for coming up with this sort of. She kind of starts as a Harley Quinn analog, but she's got a completely different personality and power set. So, but that's the theme that I was kind of going for with the book. DC introduced Harley Quinn in Batman Adventures number 13, which was a kid's book, and then later brought Harley Quinn into the normal series. I figured if it worked for DC, it's going to work for me too. So I'm introducing this villain in the kids line, and she has a much darker, more serious origin that I'll get into in the main line eventually. She is going to show up in the main series. A different version, but same character.
Right. So yeah, I really did kind of like that character. I thought that was. I do see where you're coming from as far as the Harley Quinn comparisons, but I kind of also looked at her like, I'm trying to think of the right. Like the White Rabbit character from Marvel. I don't know if you're familiar with that character.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. It's like the giant lollipop has potential to be a good prop power for a lot of different variations of things. Yep. So
and I say it was a combination of Ricky and myself and Juan Carlos, and the lollipop was Juan Carlos's idea. Mm-hmm. Ricky's intent was to have her use a crowbar that was painted as a candy cane, which is, in my mind, brilliant. Like that is, does it get any more comic book awesome weapon than that? She got a crowbar that looks like a literal candy cane in the
that is a good visual, but it's also given the crowbar with the Joker. Joker killing Jason
Skirt Todd. That trademark law. Skirt it hard.
Yeah. Grant
say
Lankard.
Don't say it.
Our friend Grant Lankard's in the chat. I know. Are you familiar with Grant?
I don't believe I've met him. I may have, though. I'm not sure. Hello, Grant.
If you remember, he does Beowulf and oh shoot, what's the new one? Grant, I can't remember the name of the new book. I apologize. He's just a Kickstarter on it, like issue 2 or 3 on it. Let me know what was the name of it again, Grant, because I haven't had a chance to get to that one yet. I know it's like, yeah, there you go, League of Cryptids.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So if you're not familiar with him, I'll have to introduce you to that later.
Yeah, I'll check. I'd like to check that out later. I'm a fan of Peter Simeti's King Cryptid book that Alterna puts out. I did a sketch cover for that once. That it's just kind of a cool concept.
Yep. Well, are you familiar with Perhaponauts?
I've heard of that, but
okay.
Were the Perhapsonauts, was that something that Nor Breyfogle worked on?
Mm-hmm.
No? Okay. I'm thinking of something else he did, I guess.
Okay, that's Todd Desato. It's Todd Desato. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I'm gonna have Grant on in the future, and we'll talk more about the League of Cryptids and stuff, because I haven't had a chance to get him on the show since he started doing that series since I was away. But let's see here. Talk about your upcoming project, The Hawk of New York.
Okay. issue 8. It's been in development for a while. You know, you have, when you are not being paid to work on your own stuff, you have to do the paid works first, and unfortunately, it's led to delays. And I am fully intent on getting this thing done by the end of March. I've got about 8 pages done. I wasn't able to queue them up like I wanted, but maybe as we're talking, I can do that, and you can see some of the art from that. I have sold, like similar to the Batman Adventures books, I have sold some ash cans.
Well, there's the cover for issue 8.
Yeah, Jeff Lasley painted that amazing cover. Really a big fan of his. He's very much an underrated artist, and he hangs out on Twitter. So if you're looking for a painted cover for your book, I'm sure he'd be happy to oblige you for a small fee.
And this book is going to be co-written with Bobby Nash, the multiple award-winning author.
Yes, and he's had stuff published by Moonstone, Dark Horse, and several others to his credit. And Bobby's my guest tomorrow, actually. Oh, great! That's awesome. I'll have to check out the chat tomorrow if I can.
Yeah. We're going to be talking about Doom Patrol because he was on Doom Patrol, if you remember.
Okay.
Told you about that?
No.
Oh, yes. The Doom Patrol TV series.
Right. As he is an actor. Like he's been on quite a few series. I want to say Cobra Kai, but I'm not sure that's right. I know he's been on Ozark and some other like very well known things, but that's awesome.
Yeah. So he's going to be talking about his time on Doom Patrol, and we can briefly talk about his thoughts on that if you want him to.
Yeah, that would be great. I have only developed about 8 pages so far of his work. And what I really like about his writing style is he is selling the pulp aspect of this in ways that I can't do myself. So I
figured that's why you got him, because he does the pulp noir.
Yeah. He's no stranger to established characters and like older Golden Age characters. He's worked on like Moon Girl and some other characters that maybe aren't commonly known, but have definitely made the rounds over the years and are well entrenched in comic book lore. So I think I've got about four pages open now.
Okay, well, I know you wanted to share some videos with us.
Yeah, let me do that. I'll start with the Crazy Horse video, even though that's kind of out of order. Let me see. I got to share my screen here.
Yes, you share your screen, and then I help you share it. If it's letting me, I don't.
Just going to do the entire screen. Don't be dismayed by all of the tabs that are open. Okay.
Oh wow. There we go.
Yeah, it's a lot. Okay, I can't see anything, but I'm gonna hit play on this.
Yeah, go ahead.
The comic book is based heavily on this. So here we go. So that's Doc talking to Yvonne Rice, which is the love interest in the story. Oh, okay. And then what is crazy about that? Are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, good. What's crazy about that is I had a opportunity to meet the descendants of the real Crazy Horse who actually had that dream, or that's Doc's retelling of the dream. So it's a little bit, like the zombie thing was kind of maybe a bit more of an embellishment than what was in the actual recorded dream. But let me show you the picture. Am I? Yeah. Can you share my screen again? Yeah, thank you.
No
so here's the picture of me and the descendant of Crazy Horse, and they wrote this book about his legacy. Like, this is kind of like an adjustment to the historical record of like what went down with Crazy Horse, as told by the remaining family members. So it's kind of nice to have essentially their blessing on this kind of endeavor, what with politics being as crazy as they can get. I am definitely not somebody who's going to try to claim native status. I've got some Creek blood on my mother's side that has always fascinated me, like what that might have been like. But the Creeks are, I don't want to get this wrong, but if you're not familiar with the Creek tribe, I know you're familiar with the Cherokee tribe, which is they're kind of more or less a subset of Cherokee.
Mm-hmm.
This is the Hawk New York official that has
addressed that book exchange as a question. Was that the Twin Towers at the end of the video?
Yes, it was, because the time is roughly 1991, 1990 when that video was filmed.
Okay.
So.
What all we got? There we go. Okay.
Yeah, you want to see my private Facebook posts?
Yeah. But anyway, what did you think of that video, John?
I thought it was great, and again, I love the music that goes along with it.
Okay. And that was basically the comic, right? Like that mirrored what the comic.
Yes. Yep.
Which format did you prefer? Did you prefer the video format or the combi comic that's like folds out to a poster thing?
Well, this is cool. I really did like that video.
Thank you.
Really did.
That was a lot of hand animation that I put together mainly in Photoshop and then edited in Premiere, which is how I like to work. Photoshop's not the best animation thing you can get. And I've kind of just hacked my way into being an animator. Like, I know there's a lot better animators out there. We can talk about your intro and how that went down if you want. But
well, that was partly my fault. You guys have seen the intro for the show. The very first handful of seconds to it where the raven is scratching and takes off and flies in was the part that Randyl was able to do the original initial part of. It was redone by Chris Hall, not because Randall's was bad. It was just there was one thing that he did better, more or less. He just made a slight correction or anything else.
Yeah, the project's got to be consistent, and I mean, I completely understand that. Like, I think like the thing I'm proudest of that intro is the music, and I had nothing to do with it.
Now you did have something to do with that. Don't say you didn't. the music that you saw was from Ricky Zero and Radio Cult. And because of Randyl, he introduced me through them and helped me and get that music made and recorded in studio and produced for us. So I appreciate that.
It really is amazing what the guy's capable of, and the resources that he can pull together sometimes just to help a friend. And it's not like he works for free, so don't get the wrong idea here.
No. It did cost me some money, but
the fact is, that's a skill set you're not going to find very many places, and certainly like it's one that should be celebrated more than it is. I think today, with Weird Al getting a $12, Subway sandwich at the end of successful career.
And I know John really appreciated that as well, because the music was originally John's, and so Ricky and when we end out the video tonight, you'll see the credits for the music and the videos. Ricky and everybody else that was involved in production will be listed in the credits. But all those folks did a really great job in remastering the sound. I know John appreciated that.
Yes. Yeah, they took it much further than I could have.
Yeah, that was my experience with my own music on the Mantelpiece album, because I'm singing on track 8, I think, Brass Taxes. That's my song. I wrote it and I'm performing it, and I went to the Mantelpiece studio and they just bumped it up like 4 notches above what my level is, and gave me really good coaching. And I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it's not a number 1 hit or anything, but I don't think that's really what I was going for. I was going for that Johnny Cash association, which you sir validated. So I appreciate that.
Who is the female vocalist on this album?
I wish I knew her name, but I would. If she's listed in the credits, if she's not listed, I'll be surprised. I think she is listed in the credits, and unfortunately, I just don't know all the band members' names.
Because she's great.
I really am a fan of All the World, which is one of the later tracks. It sounds to me like a Pink Floyd. She has this backing vocal in that, and it might not even be the same lady, but every time I hear that, I'm just like, oh yeah, that is really well done, because of that sort of Pink Floyd callback. That's what I get out of it when I listen to it. But
did you write? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, John.
Did you write all the songs on this CD, or
no, sir? I only wrote one, and then I commissioned the Eric's theme, the 100,000 Crossroads, which is the song I released when I put out issue 2. I also put out the album, the first album, and I cut the song myself. I had another song that I wrote a long time ago that I was trying to repurpose into the theme song of Hawk, and I was having a real hard time hearing myself objectively. I just couldn't get out of that headspace of that older song. So I called up a songwriter buddy, Matthew Charles Miller, and immediately he delivered this, he called me up 3 in the morning. It's like, man, I just got this, you got to hear it. And it was perfect. So I was like, well, yeah, that's definitely the song. So then I recorded it. I think he's playing a 12 string on that, if I'm remembering correctly, that may or may not be able to hear in the mix. There's also a square wave keyboard in that, real high tech stuff, that also got buried in the mix. Because that was at the infancy of me trying to present myself.
He was like, don't mock my instruments.
It was mine, it was mine. So but that I came up with different parts for that song, and it ended up getting covered by Mantelpiece later, and it's just it's not the same take as what I was going for or what Matt was going for, but it's definitely a valid take and one I really enjoy listening to. I think the female vocalist is on that one too. But I've got the video for that. It's on YouTube. It's 100,000 Crossroads is the name of it. Like, it's been up for a while now. On my channel, which I hardly ever do anything with on my channel on YouTube. So I tell people, if you're going to follow me on Instagram.
But what is your channel on YouTube so that people can go to that if they want?
Oh man, I don't even know. hang on, I'll try to figure it out.
Well, in the meantime,
view your channel. It's Java Joe Engine. Java JOINJUN. And the reason why it's Engine is because at the time, Arkansas State, their mascot was the Indians. And I'm not a fan of lengthy spelling, so I shortened it to Engine. And then Joe is, well, I was enlisted at the time, so it was Joe. And Java was, I just drank a lot of coffee to stay awake late at night. So Java Joe Engine. I have a whopping 34 subscribers and 19 videos up. But most of those are correct? Songs or short experiments that I was doing.
Is that correct?
Hang on. Yes. Java Joe Engine. Yep, that's it.
All right, there you go.
But Hawk of New York Official is where you go for, and there's underscores between each of those words on Instagram. So that if for Hawk of New York stuff, it's just Hawk of New York news or convention appearances or things like that.
Hold on. Okay. Darn it. The spell word. I hope I got this right.
Yes. That well, official at the end of it.
Oh, okay. Let me
differentiate. Accept no substitutes. And there, let's see. There's no "the" in the front. I don't know if you put one earlier or not.
No, I didn't.
Okay, great. And I did the Crazy Horse comic comment in this format. This is the first Silvers comic book I did. But for people unfamiliar, I was just going to show that. I encourage other people that are into making comics to experiment.
Is that correct?
That's it. Thank you. But I encourage people to experiment with this format because it's cheap and it's literally one piece of paper that's been folded cleverly. There is a slit in the center that you got to put in with an X-Acto. You fold it like this and you push it together like an accordion, and then you come up with a 6-page comic book or an 8-page if you don't want covers. In this case, we had all these postcards printed up, which serves as the cover and also tells people what the poster is, But I did that. I've done that with several different projects, and in the format you just can't beat because it's very cheap to produce. You can produce them yourself. You don't need a ton of money. You don't need a Kickstarter to put out your comics if you're doing it that way. And I have found that is the easiest way to get kids to read a comic is you just hand them that. You accept the loss and you build your brand and you give these things away to kids. You're giving them about 70 cents. That's what you're basically giving away. If you've printed in color on both sides with an Epson workhorse. So why not? If we're going to call ourselves comic book creators, we need to be catering and courting the younger generation. I mean, the industry is definitely changing. There's that whole flap with Diamond this past week, and
that's not just this past week. That's been going on since like October is when that started.
Yeah,
they're just making a big whoopee-doo about it in the news because now it's a thing. Now we'll talk about it.
Well, customers aren't getting their books on time. That's at the bottom of it, and.
Well, that's been true. That's been an issue with Diamond for decades, though.
Yeah,
it's just now that it's the whole shipments instead of just select books. But the majority of the retailers though aren't even using Diamond. They're using Lunar. They're using Penguin Random House for the main big two. So it's like some of the whining is a little bit over the top. The way they're
high
doing
school
it.
drama in the comics industry. No,
don't get me wrong. I'm not dismissing what Diamond's doing is wrong. It is screwed up. But the thing
it just
is,
could be better. That's how I look at it. It just could be better, and I think we all kind of have a part to play in that. If we're competing with smartphones and video games for a child's attention, we're going to lose the branding and the audience. Lewis, are you okay? You seem to be frozen. I hope we don't crash, John.
I hope not too.
Oh, good. He's back.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah, your Max had dreaming for a second.
No, it was my connection. It went out for a split second. That's what it was. Sorry about that, folks.
Oh, no problem.
Yours went first, and then ours went, and then I'm like, what's going on? Like you say, it's everybody's responsibility.
I mean, that's the dad in me. I'm lecturing everybody, but
no, you're absolutely right, and I think you and I should do a live draw session up the road, and we'll talk more about making those mini comics like that, and talk about those little things about. Everybody complains about what everybody else does wrong, but doesn't look in the mirror.
Right. Yeah.
So we'll talk about that in the future. But about the Silvers, tell us a little bit more about them.
Okay. Well, I've learned so much making those videos, and I had a point.
Who are they?
Well, Mick Gordon is the bassist and sometimes lead singer, but the main lead singer is Dane Bedford Pugh, and their drummer is Carl Up the Grove. That is the current lineup. There's been some lineup changes over the years, and Mick has been very patient with me through the whole process of his aches and pains of growing and changing the band. And it's been a very fun journey at times, and there's been a lot that I've learned through editing and Premiere, and it allowed me. It got me some paying indie movie contracts.
Okay,
I'm reading Augusta Book Exchange's comment.
Yes, the issue with Diamond is pretty complicated. They wanted to not renew a lease and pay month-to-month transition to another warehouse, but the owner found another tenant and made them move. That is true. That is part of the situation, but it's also the overall scenario of what's going on with Diamond. Steve Jeppe already retired once, and he had to come back because the people he left in charge kind of screwed everything up.
Did he leave his son in charge, or was his son just?
I don't remember the exact full parties in charge, because it wasn't just one person; it was like 3 or 4. But and that's part of what I think kind of what caused some of the kerfluffle, was that there was butting heads between management. But they failed when the COVID hit. They had a deal with Diamond. Diamond and DC had a deal, and Diamond reneged on their deal with DC, and that's what led DC to leave the Lunar. And that's what kind of started the whole chain of events rolling for the last few years. And Diamond has just been going strategically down and down and down to the point where he either wants to sell the company off, or it's just probably going to just fade away as all the major publishers are going to the other distributors. And what that's doing is leaving the indie scene and retailers kind of on the back end, wondering what's going to happen. Right now, though, they closed the Plattsburgh, New York, which was their East Coast one, and that one covered most of the stuff east of the Mississippi and a lot of their Canadian stuff. And then the Olive Branch, which is their main offices, the main warehouse, which is like 750,000 square foot versus 100,000 square foot for Plattsburgh. They were supposed to handle everything west of the Mississippi, and I think they handle the international as well. And now what they're doing is trying to get that Plattsburgh stuff coordinated. And there's that, and right, they closed down without consulting. Well, not just consulting the publishers as a whole. They were in arrears on paying DC for product that they'd already distributed, and they had a settlement agreement that was supposed to be paid. And when Diamond shut down, they also reneged on that payment, and that's what spurred the jump. So
that's interesting, and like I noticed somewhere that DC is entering the market of it's either Family Dollar or Dollar General, I can't remember which, but they're moving the books, and they're sort of like reprinting or like making the dollar versions available of their books in these stores, because it's like DC's aware that there's a problem of distribution, of getting the books in front of kids, and
there's a lot of that going on. That's something that's worth talking about, but it's getting stuff into those discount stores like Dollar General, like Five Below. And
I saw one at Five Below the other day too. That's another one. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
But that's not, part of it is reprints, but a lot of it is overstock. Discontinued overstock. They're just trying to sell because they got it in storage, and that's what Diamond used to do before they the switch over. When you guys remember, when Ollie's had all those hardcovers and all those trade paperbacks, that was their overstock. And so now it's like mostly Penguin Random House handles that stuff now, and that's another reason why Diamond is downsizing. So it's complicated, like they say.
I'm stuck in the consumer and creator point of view, and I don't see things from a retailer point of view or an industry insider point of view. All I can do is guess about what's going on. Like I am not the guy to ask these kinds of questions to. I can report what I see and what I think should happen, but
right, and like right. Yeah. Like he says, only DC is exclusive to Lunar. They're not really, okay, technically they are exclusive to Penguin Random House. They're available through Diamond. Diamond is working as a trying to think of the right word. It's like a secondary. I'm trying to think of the right word. Penguin Random House fulfills it, sends it to Diamond. Diamond fulfills the rest. That's kind of what happens. But it's actually coming out of Penguin Random House. But like I said, it gets all complicated now because we used to have it where Capital and Diamond and Heroes World were the top three. But we had a lot of regional sub-distributors that the bigger ones would sublet, so we sub-distribute through. And now Diamond's effectively a sub-distributor of Penguin Random House and Hatchet Book Group and some of the other ones. And then they don't have DC at all because DC is exclusive to Lunar as far as their books. So
I'm going to selfishly segue into the Silvers because we were talking about them.
No, that's fine.
The Revless Records, which is Silvers backwards, is their website. That's one of their websites. And then Mick also maintains a blog. I think it's Silvers Band, something like that. If you search for the Silvers Music or the Silvers Band, spelled with an I, not with a Y, that's a different group. You'll find. I always tell people to look for Silver Surf City, which was one of the early members. Drew. Let's see. Drew Youngs was. This guy right here, the blonde, he came up with this concept for basically they're stranded on a desert island with talking animals. And it's kind of like Gilligan's Island, Lost, and like SpongeBob kind of all rolled into one. And apparently, like I learned by watching an interview with Mick Orton, the mover and shaker of the Silvers, that this thing was pitched to Disney. Like, we did 4 episodes that had edited music in the videos, and like a whole like adventure that was voice acted and everything. My wife actually did some voice acting for Scooter, which is like this paraplegic dolphin character, who's also like, she's like a Jewish librarian character who gets bullied by Black Bart, who's like this historical figure. And they were supposed to meet Amelia Earhart, but they never quite got to it. But apparently, like, they pitched this to Disney, and Disney passed, and they said, well, it had too much of an edge for a kid's show. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to wear that as a badge of honor. Like, I'm responsible for that failure. Like, I like that Disney doesn't like my stuff. That's kind of cool.
Well, okay. Well, go ahead and share one of the I think you recently did a Christmas video.
Yeah. There's, so like, let me set this up a little bit. I'll just show the newest one, but in an earlier video, I invented the something that lives at the North Pole along with the elves. Like, I figured Santa has to get his coal from somewhere, and the name of the song was Christmas Rock. And what do you find in coal sometimes but diamonds? Diamonds come from coal, right? Everybody knows that. Superman crushed, charcoal briquette into a diamond ring, right? So I'm thinking, all right, you need miners. And if he already has elves, then he probably has dwarves and orcs and like the whole suite of Lothlorien, is going to be there for Lord of the Rings, like that. That's where my mind went. So I put all these dwarves digging underneath the North Pole in Christmas Rock. And you can look that one up on your own time. The Silver's Christmas Rock. So that's like the prequel to this one, where a favor gets called into the North Pole by one of the band members. So that's my setup for this. And let me share my screen again and find the right video. In fact, I might have that video closed, but bear with me 1 second. Make sure I have it open. Oh yeah, I left that page to find. Okay. All right, and share screen. Sharing screen.
I'm waiting for it.
Wish.
There.
Okay. Can you see it? Well,
as we try to beat the rush, Christmas Day is almost on us. Have you made a Christmas wish? Mine's a secret.
You're playing in the what happened?
what's that?
Cause if I share, it won't come true. That's why I'm not going to tell you. Maybe I want world peace, or an end to all disease.
That might look familiar.
Not so easy to accomplish. It's my Christmas wish.
You had an idea.
If we all could come together, make wishes that could last forever. Not so easy to
Christmas
wish. It's my Christmas wish. If we all could come together, make wishes that could last forever. I might wish love everywhere, or an end to poverty. War or hatred won't exist. That might be my Christmas wish.
And then there you go.
Okay, there you go. So I don't know if you were able to follow the action or not, but the dog is actually in the band. So got something playing. Sorry about that. I don't want you to get demonetized because I like Snoopy.
Right. No, that's fine. Yeah, the whole thing is, it's actually demonetized. Though, if I'm worried about being demonetized, because it does play a lot into the Christmas story themes, but oh well, you know.
Well, you have the band's full blessing and the record label's full blessing, I'm sure, and you have my blessing, but that doesn't mean YouTube cares. They'll shut you down for stupid things.
We'll wait and see. We'll wait and see. But and you know, that's kind of like the fun that you have with the animation side. So when do you think, you said March is when you're expecting the new issue of Hawk in New York to come out?
Well, yes. There's the first ever Augusta Video Game Expo. And in the video I just showed you, there was like a little shout out to VGH Comics, Games, and More. Like they're an online only store now. They used to have a local presence here in Augusta, but they're doing a little bit of soft consulting, I think, for this show. I don't know what to expect because it's not a comic book show at all. But I plan on being there not just to sell Hawk in New York stuff. I'm not going to have my typical setup. I'm going to have like comics and DVDs and like kind of like yard sale type items there with me that is more in line with, you know, video games and geek culture. So it's kind of an experiment for me, and I think for the guys putting on the show too. So we're not expecting, you know, gangbusters turnout or a huge event, but should be a lot of fun, and it should be a good place to find a good deal on video games of all different types. The next show is actually, for me, is going to be at Chris's Vault sale, which is, I think, where me and you met Lewis.
Yes, that would be Chris Foss's. That would be Chris Foss's Vault sale here in Columbia, South Carolina.
Right. His next one's on the 8th and 9th of February, and I plan to be there on the 8th. And then my biggest show that's also pretty close is the Texoma Comic-Con in Durant, Oklahoma. So I got family in Arkansas, and they kind of facilitate some of these bigger trips. And I've got a friend out there, Rob Bevan, who does amazing work. He's emerging, like I think he's rounding up his first year at doing conventions and presenting his artwork. But his work with me is not something I can't talk about it yet. But I'd like to come back on your show at some point and talk about what we're working on once it's developed a bit more. But then there's a Jolanta in March. That's the 28th, I think, of March. But their dates might not be set in stone right now. Not sure where they stand. Their website hasn't been updated, so I'm not sure if those dates are still standing or not. Okay. And then there's Heroes Con and Joe Fest later on in June.
Yep. So you got your first half of your year kind of booked out.
Figured it out. Yeah. There's something in May that I'm looking forward to, and then I'm looking to book something in April and in July. And then seems like everything happens in October. Like October is always like this super crazy busy month. and then you just sort of recover until January. I do want to give a shout out to a Charlotte show. Well, it's in Rock Hill, I think. The one day Charlotte Comic Con is this weekend. I'm probably not going to be there. If I do make it, it's just going to be there to shop on Sunday. It's a one-day family-friendly event. It's always a good show. I think, let's see, Dave Henson, that's his show, at him and Rick Fortenberry. They've been a tour de force in comic books for a long time, and their shows are always fun. So if you're able to check out their show, this weekend, it's something fun to do, and maybe pick up a Christmas present for a local indie creator who lives in Augusta.
Okay. We're going to move forward to our reviews for the week. You're welcome to hang out a little bit because I know did you want to talk about that Batman book that we were talking about earlier as well?
Yeah, you were going to review Batman Full Moon.
Yes, we're going to get to that eventually. But we got to cover last week's reviews again because of how bad the audio issues were. We apologize for those audio issues last week. So let's go ahead and present the thing and let John go.
All right. So this is Disney Villains Scar. Publisher Dynamite, writer Chuck Brown, artist Trevor Fraley, colorist Chiara Di Francia, lettering Jeff Eckelberry, editor Nate Cosby. Loads of cover artists. Loads of cover artists. But genre mystery fantasy, released April to July 2023. It's a 4-issue miniseries, age rating teen. So, a startling new vision starring Disney's greatest villain set within the world of the Lion King. Eisner and Ringo award-winning author Chuck Brown of Bitter Root and stunning artist Trevor Fraley tell a tale of fire and fury centered on an enraged Scar. Unable to accept that he will never be king, not so long as Mufasa and his new son inhabit Pride Rock, but a plan is starting to formulate within Scar's corrupt mind, which will bring him face to face with the mysterious shaman Rafiki. His path is perilous as he faces cunning vultures, confronts the hyena queen, all to find a means to make the throne his. What depths will he reach to achieve his goals? So like I said last time, this is the series that brought me back into comics after an 8-year hiatus. I'd gotten divorced in 2015 and was pretty much broke, so I had to cut out all extra spending while I paid off my debts and worked my way back into the black. And Randall, do you know who Andreas Deja is?
No, does not ring a bell.
So he's a world-class animator. He was with Disney for 30 years, and he was the supervising animator of Scar in the original Lion King. And he has a blog called Deja Vu, and that's how I found out that Dynamite would be doing the series on Scar. And by extension, I also found out they would be doing Gargoyles and Darkwing Duck. And so that's what brought me back into comics.
You said his name was Andreas what?
Andreas Deja, Deja.
Okay. It's interesting that you chose this book to review because the writer Chuck Brown, I had the pleasure of meeting him at one of Chris Voss's vault sales. He's the author of Bitter Root, which was critically acclaimed.
Mm-hmm.
I bought a copy and I've still haven't had a chance to read it.
Chuck actually lives here in Columbia, so we're both familiar with Chuck. We wanted to get him on the show, but it's just Christmas time, December time, people are busy.
Yeah, sure.
But we'll have Chuck on in the future to talk with him about his varied experiences with the market.
the book looks sharp. I like the cover design quite a bit.
And you know, we talked a little bit about this last week with Chris Hall. Some of the coloring and the lettering was not my cup of tea. There's things I wouldn't have done, but overall, it's like you can be it's not nitpicking, but it's not like it's killing the book either. You know, it's just something I would look a little bit like it could have been done better. I don't know if you can see through these or not. Let me see if I can enlarge this a little bit more. Like if you look right over here on the edge of the bottom right corner panel there, I don't know if is my arrow showing.
I can't see an arrow on my end.
Okay.
I don't see one.
Okay. Do you see one now? No, you don't. Okay. Let's see.
I do now.
Oh, you did see one.
I saw a white one at the top.
No, I was talking about around the actual image. It doesn't show. That's all right. Okay. Well, there's just little things like the coloring goes over the border edge on the bottom corner panel on the right. Can you see where I'm talking about?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, little things like that. And you can't probably tell this from the shot, but all the captions are not, you can actually see the background of the artwork behind the caption boxes and all the word balloons. And I thought that this was a mistake in video stuff because John sent me on the computer, but it's actually printed like that. And I thought that was something they could have done better. So I only gave it like a 3.5 star rating myself. And John, you gave it a 4.5, I believe.
Yeah, I did. You know, I thought it was very well done, very well written, and like as I said last week, I mean, I could practically hear Jeremy Irons' voice as I was reading Scar's dialogue. I really think they got his character well, and you know, I'm glad they kept it as a teen young adult story instead of trying to do an all ages thing. So I think the Scar is definitely deserving of that. And of course, this one of my favorite splashes here with Rafiki and the dream version of Pride Rock.
Okay. Next one.
Gargoyles.
Can I say, before we move on to that, can I say something about the art?
Yes, you may. Let me go back real quick.
Yeah, can you go back? I really like the colors on this, and I see what you're saying about the choice of the transparent. Maybe that wasn't the best, and even the errors on the borders. But I kind of feel like that's not the color's fault. I feel like that's probably the editor's fault for not catching some of that.
Yeah, well, there you go. That yes, I'm looking at it from an editorial perspective. I thought the editor should review that.
Should have caught it, yeah. And if memory serves,
it's not really should have caught. This is done consistently throughout the book, so it's an editorial choice.
Oh, they just decided to make it look like that for not a great reason.
Yeah,
so I agree. It could be better. It could be better.
Yeah. So, you know, if they're consistent with it all the way through on every page, it's an editorial choice. It's not something that you miss when it's done like that. But I don't know why they made that choice. So, but yes. Okay, back to Gargoyles now.
All right, Gargoyles. Again, publisher Dynamite. Writer Greg Wiseman, who is the series creator. Artist George Camadeus, colorist Arantia Studio, lettering Jeff Eckelberry. Once again, editor Nate Cosby. Again, there was like 78 different variant covers for this first issue alone. It was crazy. Genre action adventure fantasy superhero, released December 2022, and it's still ongoing. Age rating teen. What it's about: 1,000 years ago, superstition and the sword ruled. It was a time of darkness. It was a world of fear. It was the age of gargoyles. Stone by day, warriors by night. They were betrayed by the humans they had sworn to protect, frozen in stone by a magic spell for 1,000 years. Now here in Manhattan, the spell is broken and they live again. They are they're defenders of the night. They are gargoyles. Picking up from the original cartoon series from Disney, creator Greg Wiseman is back at the helm writing the series, reintroducing the Manhattan Clan, a family of gargoyles at full strength, though modern New York City is full of attractions and distractions, and each member of the clan has begun to go their own way. But their bonds will be tested when nefarious factions from all across the world attempt to steal that rarest, most precious of possessions, an unhatched gargoyle egg.
Yeah, this was, like I said, I was going to read it, but I have Kitty again.
But yes, so as far as I'm concerned, Gargoyles is one of the absolute best TV series Disney has ever done, hands down. I don't think they had really done anything quite like it when it premiered, and I still don't think they've done anything quite like it since. It had a darker look and tone to it. It had, complex story arcs and characters, and it was just really well done. And it only lasted two official seasons, but actually 3. But it had a very loyal fan base and still does. And I think, of course, this isn't the first time it's been in comics format, but the thing is, when you have a comics property, or when you're reintroducing something that has been away for a while, you have to bring new readers up to speed, and yet at the same time you have to move the story along. And I think Greg Wiseman does a really good job of that. He tells he tells you just what you need to know about to bring you up to speed, but the story moves right along, and it's just it's very well written, and I like the artwork very much. So, and it's just good to see these characters again. It really is. I'm thrilled that I'm anytime Disney does something with their properties that aren't the current big thing, I always like, and especially something like Gargoyles. I'm just really glad to see it back in print again.
Now, this is also done by the same letterer as what was done on Scar, and it doesn't have the same problems. The lettering actually is solid throughout, so you can kind of see the difference. But there were a couple of panels I saw in the book that they had that sort of for the sound effects, it was a little more translucent or transparent. But this is actually, I thought this was the better book between the two. But then I'm not a big fan of The Lion King, and John is. So I gave this one a 4, and I believe you gave this one a 4.5.
Mm-hmm.
And so, let's see. There's some more of the art. Let me go ahead and try and get that back to, there you go. So I'm not cutting it out completely. I'll go back. There you go. So our faces weren't cutting out some of the artwork there.
Yeah.
It's very bold. I like that about it.
Yeah. Our next book is Sea Serpent's Heir, volumes 1 through 3, publisher Image and Skybound Entertainment, writer Margaret Scott, and artist Pablo Tunica, with letterers Ariana Mar for book 1, and AW's Hame for books 2 and 3. The genre is fantasy rather. Publisher age recommendation is 12 and up. Released originally in October 22 for book 1, September 2023 for book 2, and September 2024 for book 3. These were full graphic novels. What it's about. Ayala is a bored teenage girl who lives in the small lands of Kinnaman Isle with her 2 aunts while her mother is off on adventures on the seas as a pirate queen. Little does she know, or little does she suspect rather, that the reason that she's hidden away from the world and leaving this boring existence is because she's the daughter and reincarnation of the demon Serpent's Heir, who in his prior incarnation had almost destroyed the world. Now a fanatical religious warrior cult is seeking out the reincarnation of Zir with the intent to kill it before it becomes too powerful to stop. Only Ayala has only barely begun to awaken to her new powers, and she must learn her destiny and face off against foes both foreign and familiar to her, while trying to remain herself and not lose to the destructive anger and thirst for vengeance upon those who would have betrayed and have wronged her. I thought that this is one of the better original series that Image has released in recent years. I believe it was largely underrated when it was coming out and overlooked because of the negative attitudes of some retailers and a lot of the YouTube audience that reviews comics towards the women creators, particularly writers like Scott. More fool they. Scott manages to really present a well thought out world and complex characters that oftentimes do the wrong things for the right reasons. And you can see the conflicts of interest and pain that are in all the characters' feelings and senses of the consequences of their actions. Both of Bella's aunts, her mother, and the young man Bashir, whom Ayala initially trusts, who ultimately betrays her and causes her to embrace her inner demon, all legitimately love and care for her in their own ways. Even Zir, the demon, demon serpent, who manipulates Ayala in order to allow himself to be born again through her, does love his quote-unquote daughter. In a market where many characters these are being written rather in one-dimensional tones and versions, I think the author here really shined in terms of characterization and how she used the characters' internal conflicts as both a metaphor and as a means to move her plotline forward, whereas many of the lesser writers today are hammering one character trait or point over and over to the audience to the detriment of their stories. Maybe that was because she's writing her own characters instead of writing corporate characters or shells, and she had time to properly, develop these books as opposed to the production line of get it done now. That is a typical methodology of mainstream comics, but it is a vastly superior result. Artistically, Pablo Tunica generally grows throughout the 3-book series, as does the young protagonist, Ayala. He does a really nice job with character design. The coloring is a bit hit and miss, in my opinion, and sometimes he does have a sort of goofy-looking face or facial expression, but they're consistent in terms of design, and while it might personally pull me out of the story for a moment while I'm contemplating his choices and why he drew it that way at times, it's not so egregious as to pull me completely out of the story, which is something that a lot of artists with weaker storytelling skills unfortunately do to me these days. It really feels like a story that could also be easily adapted into the animated film or TV series format, and that's not a surprise that given that Scott is a TV writer. What does surprise me is rather lukewarm reception that the book seemed to get from comics fans, even though libraries and schools seem to love it. It's a series I recommend highly for 11 and up, not 12 and up. I don't understand why they went 12 and up, but I think a well-read 10 or 11-year-old can easily follow this. It's a good alternative to the heavy rotation of manga that is being marketed to the kids these days. And with the series being only 3 issues or 3 books, it's an extremely affordable series that parents can invest in, as opposed to those 35 volume to 200 volume series that are going to cost you thousands of dollars to complete your collection. This is only $14.99 a volume, so you're like $45 for all 3, and you get the complete series. I give it 4 out of 5 stars, and here is some of the artwork for that. I don't know if you guys remember some of this. I mentioned that the demon reflects in her out of her ear, on the edges of her ear, so she looks a little bit odd at different times.
I like how they integrated lyrics into the storytelling. That's pretty cool.
Yep.
This has definitely got more emotional, like, moodiness to it than the previous 2 had for me personally. I mean, I respond to this kind of art a little bit more strongly, I think.
That's cool.
Yeah, I love that layout there on the right.
Yeah, this is actually her talking, her sensibility of where Zir and the power is actually in her subsystem. You know, it's to speak of how she was born in that part of the story, and you can see the demon serpents here wrapped around in circles and stuff. It's kind of a interesting design there.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was last week's. Let's talk about what we got this week. This week, what I bought, I don't know if John got anything this week or not, but I got the Midnight Tiger Origins hardcover. If this was supposed to arrive 3 weeks ago, as we talked earlier, Diamond's been having some issues. I'll review that later this month. I'm going to try and get the creator, Ray Anthony Height, on the show and discuss it with him. I also got Shiver Suspense Stories #1 from Oni Press, which I will review as well later this month. Let's see. Stuff that I'm still waiting to arrive at my store because of the Diamond situation. Minor Arcana #4 from Boom Studios. Termite Mound by Matt Howarth and Cosmic Lion Productions. This is the guy I was telling you your work kind of reminds me of.
Cool. That was the Matt Haworth, you said?
Yeah, Matt, M-A-T-T,
Uh-huh.
Howarth, H-A-W-A-R-T-H.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you look up him online, you'll see where.
Yeah, I'll definitely check him out.
There's Parliament of Rooks from Ablaze Publishing, Cemetery Kids Don't Die, Volume 1, paperback from Oni Press, and Slightly Exaggerated, Volume 1 graphic novel from Dark Horse Comics that haven't arrived, but I am waiting for them to hopefully show up. Now, let's talk about Batman Full Moon, #1 and 2. Publisher is DC Comics Black Label. That's the mature readers line. Writer is Rodney Barnes. Artist is Stefan Subic. Colorist is Stefan Subic with black and white, glow-in-the-dark cover by Stefan Subic. Lettering is Russ Wooten. Editors are Matthew Levine and Chris Conroy. The genre is a horror superhero book. The first issue came out on October 16th, and then the second issue came out like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And it's still ongoing because I think it's like a 4-issue series. What it's about: an ancient and supernatural force stalks the streets of Gotham City. A lichen or lycanthrope so powerful it'll defy Batman's most trusted resources, his brilliant mind, and extensive and expensive gadgetry. But are Batman's physical strength and resilience alone enough to put the creature down for good, or will this fight strip him down to his very bones? Even powerful magical allies like Zatanna caution him that he might not walk away from this one unscathed. He must rely upon the health of Zatanna and John Constantine if he's going to save his city and himself from the curse of the werewolf. But with the full moon approaching, will the ancient magics that Bruce's allies managed to summon be enough to keep the beast away from Gotham's most vulnerable? And can the werewolf's human half find the salvation he so longingly desires? What do I think? Well, so far the story by Barnes is pretty basic, playing on the typical tropes for werewolf stories. some of his characterization for Zatanna is a little bit off to me, because while she's being a little bit overly protective of Bruce at times, I think, and while I realize that Bruce seems to have that past relationship or wannabe relationship with seemingly every DCU female these days, given how they've written Zatanna's relationship with John Constantine elsewhere in more recent years and his involvement in the story, it's like, okay, are these two going to play alpha male posers fighting over who's going to get the girl? Or when we should be really focusing on the plot of the story? It was a little bit distracting to me, I thought. Now, some people didn't see it that way, but that's what I got out of some of it. I think the comic writers really need to stop and tone down the sexuality crap in their work today, even on adult theme, mature theme comics. This is not what superhero comics were meant to be about. And there's other elements of the story that deserve more emphasis, I think. This also parlays into the behavior of the werewolf as well, as the wolf is both animalistic and in some ways in heat, shall we say. And then when the character's in his human form, he's appalled and ashamed by his actions he's committed. If you're going to tap into that underlying sexuality of the trope of the werewolf, then you can't make your character repugnant and pseudo-sympathetic, which they're trying to do with this. They've even brought, Kirk Langstrom, the Man-Bat, in here to try and play up that thing, because Man-Bat's sort of a lycanthropic type character as well. But when you're doing a gothic horror romance story in a pseudo superhero trope genre, you have to kind of be able to take those tropes and turn them on the ear. And I don't see Barnes doing that. And I think it makes for a weaker story in terms of the plotting and pacing than it could have been. Now, conversely, the art by Stefan Subic is fairly well executed. I do think he relies on certain color palettes a little bit too much, and the print production gets a little dark and muddy with his colors as a result. I don't know if that's something that needed more editorial oversight, because the things are sometimes print, like I said, a little bit too dark. But I don't know if that's a printer error or just how his paintings were scanned, or if he did digital painting, or what he did just to make that happen. But he seems to be trying to evoke some Simon Bisley and some Alex Ross elements in his work here. And while I think that's very interesting to look at, it is something of an odd merging of influences, in my opinion. Sometimes the painting and color side just seems a little bit missing of the finer elements that his influences Bisley and Ross excel at. And while I won't say his art is bad, because it's not, I think it does fall slightly short of that of his contemporaries in that style in the color version. Now, when you look at the black and white glow in the dark covers that you've seen on the side here, I think those are extremely well done. And I would say in some ways that the book as a whole could have been stronger and would have been stronger if the interiors had been done in a totally black and white with gray wash noir film style than with gray and sepia tones, rather than the broader color palettes. Subic's coloring tends to overpower some of his simplicity and structural power in his drawings, at least so far what we've seen on this project. That being said, it's far from the worst Batman series we've seen in recent times. I just think it falls just a little bit short of the story's potential. And I give it 3 out of 5 stars. Let's take a quick look at some of that artwork. Oh, wow. I didn't know it got put upside down. That's weird. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can flip that around real quick in Photoshop and refix that for you guys.
Lewis, I just want to say that was very well said, because especially what you said about Zatanna, I thought that was gross mischaracterization. And that was the point in the comic where I was like, wait a minute, this is trying to do too much with what is there. You'd think like this is Batman and this is a werewolf, and it's going to be this awesome, like sort of hunter-prey relationship. And you just don't get that. Like it's not what I expected it to be. And that was my problem with the book. I read the first issue and I thought, I'm not going to be back for a second issue, because this is not for me. It's just not what I wanted to see. It had a lot going on. And I thought, when I saw the cover, I thought they're trying to do Red Rain, but with a werewolf. This is going to be awesome. And I was very I went in with my expectations really high, and they were just shattered. Like the artwork was beautiful, The storytelling, not so much. That's my hot take on it.
Well, no, that's not wrong. I mean, let me go ahead and re-upload the file now that I've got it corrected. I didn't realize it was upside down. Okay, there we go. That's much better. Now it makes sense. There we go. Can you guys see what I'm talking about in the Simon Bisley type coloring and use in particularly in the bottom third of the first page on the left? Can you see that kind of influence of Simon Bisley in that? Or
I guess so. I do see what you're talking about with the murkiness in that first panel. It's a bit indistinct and it doesn't fade. It should be a hard fade to black, but they went with gray for some reason, and I don't think it works as well as they had intended.
Yeah. I mean, I like some of the art. I like the middle panel with the close-up on the eyes, and the third panel on the right.
That's cool.
There's all the work as a whole is really solid. There's nothing wrong with it at all as far as what it is. I just think that if this had been done all in like black and white with sepia, you could have gotten a lot more noir type sensibility to it.
Yep, it would have been a better tie-in with the subject matter for sure.
And with all these color things, it's almost like he's trying to do Bisley and Chris Stevens, and I can see some, like I said, I saw a little bit of Alex Ross. I see more of the Alex Ross in the covers, on those black and white covers. I see that Alex Ross type feel to it. So it was like, yeah, I kind of wanted to see more of it in the black and white than I did the color. But I wouldn't say it's a bad comic by any means. Like I said, I give it 3 out of 5, which, people might think that's a low score. It's not. That means it's a pretty average for the whole overall market, but it doesn't mean it's a bad comic.
I think the expectation, you go in with high expectations for this, and then they're not met. That's part of the problem. It's not that it's a bad book. It's very beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Creature Commandos, 1 through 3 of 6. Publisher DC Comics. Writer David Dasmalkian. Artist Jesus Hervas. Colorist is Alex Guimarães. Hope I pronounced that right. Or maybe it's Guimarães. I don't know. Lettering is Ferran Delgado. The cover artist is Terso. The editor is Katie Kubert. The genre is horror superhero. This was originally started out, released October 2nd, 2024, and it's still going on presently. Well, it's about a vampire, a werewolf, a gorgon, and an undead soldier walk into a grocery store, and all hell breaks loose. This is the Creature Unit, a team of misfits assembled by a madly talented scientist for a dangerous military mission. In this brand new era of the Creature Commandos, penned by the creator of Count Collie and actor David Dasmalkian, who appeared in James Gunn's Suicide Squad and in the movie Late Night with the Devil. The claws are out, fangs are bared, and blood is spilled. Lots of it. But as with any new combat crew, they have to learn to work together and tolerate one another if they have any chance of survival against the diabolical Brainiac. What do I think? Well, I'm going to be honest. The only reason I picked this book up was because I read Malkian's Count Crowley series, and I like that series, so I figured I would like this as well. Otherwise, I probably would not have gotten this. That being said, this series is a new interpretation of sorts. While Dasmalkian is clearly appreciative of the original series from the 1980s by J.M. DeMatteis and Pat Broderick, it's also clearly modernized and set up to align more with the modern James Gunn version, even though it's not the James Gunn version, which just started the new animation series recently with HBO Max. Unfortunately, I don't get HBO Max, so I haven't seen that, and I can't do a comparison until that comes out on the DVD release, if it ever does. But the overall story is a semi-reset. Where it differs, however, from the upcoming anime series, or that has just come out, and the original comics is in the roster. The Gorgon, Nina Rhodes, the vampire, Vincent Velcro, which is not what the original vampire's name was. The original name was Vincent Velcoro, not Velcro. But I guess he just did that to be smarky. I thought it was a little lazy to do that, but they did it anyway. A new female werewolf named Wanda, whereas originally the werewolf was male, and they did sort of keep the original Lucky Frankenstein, which, you know, I can see where he cares about these characters and the history, and he's trying to play into the original history. And by bringing in Brainiac, who was a significant player in the 80s, where it had been revealed that they had been captured by Brainiac and had been held captive on his brain chip. I don't know if you guys remember the 80s style brain chip that looked like a giant metal head with the skull face.
It was awesome. It was awesome. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go
No, that's fine. But back in the 80s, they were part of that storyline. So I was really impressed that the writer did that. Unfortunately, many of the complaints I've seen from other reviewers writing about this program, about this project, is that he didn't know canon, which means, well, if he doesn't know canon, why is he able to bring all this stuff from the 70s and 80s into it? Or they're whining because this isn't the Jeff Lemire Agents of Shade version, and frankly, they can just shut the hell up. I just don't appreciate that. They're not giving him his fair credit. Jesus Hervas's art is solid. It has a nice retrograde 1980s vibe going on, especially in the first issue. It keeps modernizing to a more current stylization while maintaining a stylistic consistency. Part of that is the layouts, and part of that is the lettering by Ferran Delgado, who has done some very likely underappreciated but excellent work on the series so far. Unfortunately, the computer coloring has something to be desired. Having looked at the story pages in black and white from Hervas's Instagram page, it goes a little bit too dark in the color palette again, and it causes some of the line work to get lost in shadow effects, and not in a good way. It doesn't destroy the line art, but it does detract from the overall effect of the book in different spots. And I would have preferred a more retro feel to the color with more flats and only spot shadowing, as opposed to some of the over-rendering that's typical of computer coloring today. Some of the pages are just over-rendered, and they're trying to create lighting and shadow work that doesn't need to be there. My overall rating for the series so far is a 3.5 out of 5. And here is some of the artwork. Now, can you see what I mean by that classic feel of 70s, early 80s at the top of that first page? With the splash page, the logo team, and then the credits team across the top. And
definitely, and even the sound effects that they're using too. That's the way they rendered those.
Yeah. Say that again, Randy. Or Randall.
So even the sound effects and the way they rendered those kind of is a callback to the way comics were done back then.
Yeah, and I love that part of it. And then it's also blended perfectly with modern, because you got the description of where they're at, Truman's grocery store 2 weeks from now, being the more modern type fonts and storytelling. So it's like a good work there. And they're in the process of getting their stuff, fighting someone, and the Frankenstein monster goes in and destroys a bunch of stuff. But unfortunately, someone who was in the room as a bystander got killed because they didn't know she was hiding underneath where he set off the bazooka, and it killed her. So he's like, complete accident, and he's like depressed, and he's like, yeah, I'm thinking I'm gonna just go ahead and take my bazooka and shoot my head off here.
I will say the line work is really delicate where it needs to be. I don't think it's bold enough where it needs to be, though. That's my only critique of it. It's very well done, but I just thought he can use a thicker pen once in a while, and I think it'll make it even better.
Yes and no. I know what you're saying. that's part of the thickness of the lines are kind of lost from the coloring. I don't know if you can see that in the art.
Yep.
But from that small a frame. Let me see if no, I don't have. Oh, yes, I do. It's up here.
Like maybe after the colorist is done, give it back to the inker to embolden some of those lines.
Yeah, I wish they would some of the time. But our next book is Cruel Universe 1 through 5. Publisher Oni Press, with various writers and artists, colorists, and letterers. The cover artist is various, but the main covers that you see here are by Greg Smallwood. I'm showing 1, 2, 3, and 5 because that's what fit in the ones, and I didn't. The fourth one was the least of the was my least favorite of the covers. The editors are Sierra Hahn and Matt Dreyer. The genre is dark science fiction. This series began on August 7th, 2024 release, and it's going on to the present. I think there's still make 3 or more issues for this run. What it's about. This is a return to the classic EC anthology type of horror comics and science fiction comics of the 1950s and 1960s, only produced by modern writers and artists that rotate with each issue. There are usually 4 different standalone short stories per issue. I'm not going to go into all the different stories. I just didn't have time. I will revisit that and go more in depth when we do a whole thing on Cruel Universe and that Epitaph of the Abyss and all the whole brand, because there's like 4 different series that they're doing. But overall, this series has been hit and miss, in large part because the editors, who claim they're trying to revive that classic style, only modernized, didn't get the memo that we already have a bunch of horror and dark science fiction comics anthologies out there doing the modernized stuff. And while I do credit the creators that have worked on this for trying to keep it in the EC vein, the series needs more classic old pulp fiction type writers and artists on the title, like Bobby Nash.
Right.
And like Ron Fortier and others. We'll get to who I would recommend in a moment. And there's so many exceptional talents out there that aren't working, and they could probably do I don't want to say they would necessarily do a better job. I just think they would do something that's more in sync with what they're saying they're aiming for. And I think because I was expecting more of that old school EC feel, because I read a lot of EC collections, it left me a little bit disappointed. But then I was also kind of expecting it to be that way before the series began. So I was like, I knew it was going to be like that going in. So I wasn't really like angry about it. So it's there. Now, while I have no bad things to say about any of the stories so far, I do have to say it was just average to slightly above average overall for what it was. Again, I would like to see more stories from other less often used writers who fit this particular genre in future issues, or if they do another volume of this moving forward, like Bobby, Brian K. Morris, Ted Davies, Ron Fortier, Jan Sternad of Dalgota fame, and Randy Zimmerman come to mind. And I'd like to see artists like Chris Kohler, Jeff Slemons, Mitch Ballard, Mike Dubich, and others. Again, that's not to say that any of the writers who were featured in these books were bad. Stephanie Phillips, Matt Kent, Cullen Bunn, Christopher Cantwell, Brian H. Winters all wrote respectable stories. It's more that I'm burned out on those writers from having them be available on a whole bunch of other stuff in the market already. And I'd rather just see the aforementioned above that I mentioned just a few seconds ago that I just don't get to see, and we don't get to see nearly enough of instead.
And I echo that about Ron Fortier and Brian K. Morris. Brian K. Morris wrote Skyman Battles the Masters of Steam, and I was lucky enough to work on the cover of that book. But I was struck by his grasp of the golden age. He's actually written for Time Bound Entertainment. I've got some Brian K. Morris scripts that I'm sitting on and hope to develop someday. I echo that. I'd like to see more from him as well.
And so anyway, I gave it 4. I did give the books 4 out of 5 stars. They are good books. I know that I sounded very negative in my review. Trust me, the books are good. It's just that I'm more wanting those other people to do more into that sync. That's
and again, like they're trying to recreate something that existed, and that's tricky. And I don't know if you've seen the new Savage Sword of Conan, but it has that similar type of problem. Is like all the people that made Savage Sword of Conan what it was, a lot of them are dead now, and you're going to be hard pressed to find the exact talent match the exact chemistry that book had now. Like, I mean, it can still be done, but it's just going to be, kind of tricky.
I know what you're saying, but they've already made the decision that it's Jim Zub's land, and I don't care for him.
Okay.
It's like if I wanted Jim Zub, I'd read his Skull Kicker series that he started with, an Image. That's his own thing. Him doing Conan is just, it's just you're just writing the coattails of other people. Go do your own thing.
Right.
That's kind of how I look at him.
I'm happy to see it on the newsstands again. I picked it up and I'm like, well, it sounds like it has a similar problem set as this project does. Was all I'm saying.
Sure. Okay, John, you're up.
All right. So, Randall, can you tell I'm a Disney fan? Darkwing Duck. Again, Dynamite Entertainment writer Amanda Dybert. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Artist is Carlo Lauro, who did the pencils, inks, and colors. So he did it all. Once again, letters Jeff Eckelberry, main cover David Nakayama, editor Nate Cosby, genre adventure, anthropomorphic, superhero, rating, all ages. What it's about: the protector of Saint Canard is back in action. He is the terror that flaps in the night, the ferocious fowl who plucks the evil eye from the face of foul play. He is Darkwing Duck. Alongside his trusty sidekick, Launchpad McQuack, Darkwing hyper-vigilantly defends Saint Canard from the dastardly, devilish demons who would wage wanton war. Try saying that 5 times fast. Anyway, by night, our
I just want to add that foul play should be spelled FOWL.
Well, yeah, it should have. That was John, though.
Well, I lifted it right off of their official.
I know they screwed it up too. I know.
Oh yeah, they got it. Well, FOWL. It's spelled ferocious foul, and then they go foul play.
Yeah.
They dropped the ball in the second time.
Yeah, that's probably why.
Can't do 2 puns in one sentence, I guess. Sorry.
So
I'm here to derail you guys.
By night, the caped defender lurks in the shadows, striking fear and maybe confusion in the heart of the criminal underworld. But by day, no one suspects that Darkwing is mild-mannered Drake Mallard, a well-meaning father to his adorable adopted daughter, Gosling. Can Darkwing successfully navigate his 2 separate lives, all the while looking incredibly cool and impossibly handsome? Hint, probably not, but you'll have to read to find out. And so I actually did write down my thoughts about this one. So Darkwing Duck ran from 1991 to 1992, both on Saturday mornings on ABC and as part of the Disney afternoon programming block. What set the show apart from Tailspin and Chippendale Rescue Rangers was that, one, it featured a mostly original cast of characters, and I say mostly original because Launchpad McQuack and Gizmo Duck had appeared in DuckTales. And 2, the show was produced as a parody and a send-up of superheroes and pulp heroes such as Batman and the Shadow. Now, while I watched and liked the show back in the day, I wasn't as big of a fan as I was of Tailspin and later Gargoyles, but the show and the character have grown on me over the years, and I've become a great admirer of Darkwing's voice actor, the legendary Jim Cummings. So I was looking forward to this series from the moment I first heard about it, and I have to say that Dybert and Lauro do an outstanding job of capturing the spirit of the show. The stories move along at a brisk pace, and Dybert keeps the dialogue snappy and hilarious. She does a great job of making Darkwing's catchphrases feel improvisational, which, as Cummings has said, they often were. I also love the dynamic between father and daughter. Dybert understands that for all of their bravado and comic hijinks, Darkwing and Gosselin truly love and care about each other, and she gives them some genuinely heartfelt moments together. And as for the artwork, I cannot stress this enough. I am so glad they went with the style of the original show instead of the style of the 2017 DuckTales reboot. I find it much more appealing, and Lauro really brings the characters to life. So I gave it five stars, and I went back and forth about that because, yes, you could argue that the series is lightweight and not exactly groundbreaking. It's true that the series has little on its mind besides pure entertainment, but at that, it succeeds in spades. I'm having an absolute blast reading this. I feel like it's produced by a writer and artist who seem to really understand what made the original animated series work, and it shows. So I highly recommend it.
Okay. To be fair, I never was a fan of the property. I was in college or just out of college when that stuff was coming out, and I didn't watch a whole lot of TV, so I wasn't really into it the way that John was. But after a quick cursory read over the first issue online, I mostly concur with John's perspective. Now, if I had sat down and really had time to really critique it, as you can tell, I had a lot to read this week, so I was like, I was a little bit out of didn't have enough time. But I probably would have knocked it down a little bit more of a peg or two with my usual criticisms as an editorial eye. But in terms of whether or not it serves its purposes as all ages entertainment, I'd say 4.5. So, it's a good solid book as well. Let's go ahead and show some of the art.
All right, so of course on the left we've got Darkwing saying one of his catchphrases, and I've actually and the reason I brought up the improvisational aspect, I've actually heard Jim Cummings say in interviews that it basically got to a point because he did like ad lib most of those lines, and he has said that it actually got to a point where whenever he would get a script, it would say, I am the terror that flaps in the night, and then the writer would go, it really doesn't matter what I put here because Jim will say something else anyway. I am Darkwing Duck, like so. which I think is awesome.
Well,
and again,
yeah. I mean, well, the thing is, when you have someone who can really enter into the characters become the character, they have that means to not just do improvisation, but actually do stuff that actually is better than what was written. And that, and when you get someone who's really good, like Cummings was for Darkwing, or Batman voice,
Kevin Conroy.
Thank you. Kevin did that too for Batman as his career moved on. He would do things like that where it wouldn't just be improvisation, but he would be like, he could see stuff in the script and say, hey, can we change this, before he would actually do recordings. So I think that was more just the familiarity of what Cummings could do and understanding the character. in that part. So let's see, what does that say? I can't get it to enlarge. So it says, I am the terror that flaps in the night. I am the scrupulous sculptor, who chisels justice from the surface of
sinister stones.
Yes, I am.
DW.
Yeah. So yeah, I love the Megavolt car with the little. Yeah, think about this. Everybody's driving around cars right now with their antlers and their red-nosed car on the front of their car right now for Christmas. Does this not look like like this is? If you change that to red, it'd be like red-nosed reindeer.
Change the fins to antlers.
Yeah. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And that, you got Quacker Jack in here. Who's a
that's from issue 2. And of course they do the they do a Superman type of reference at the bottom there. Talk about the phone booth and then I love what Goslin says. Let me pull it. Let me pull up. I got the issue right here.
Oh man, don't tell Dad. He'll never let me get anything done unless we save the city. Then he'll have to let me get one. I'm not quite sure I follow the logic on that. So it's like, let's get into unsupervised and mildly questionable trouble. And I wish they had not done that color.
Yeah.
That is not the best color choice. It blends too much in with the background. They should have done it like, I don't know, maybe the darkest purple out of her character instead.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, but other than that, and I kind of wish they didn't do that weird effect behind her in panel 3. That it's I don't know what that's supposed to be.
It seems like one of those panels needs to be open borders. I'm not sure if it's the bottom one or the next to last panel, but you can probably safely lose the borders on one of those. I don't know if stylistically that's what they wanted, but that's what I would have done.
Yeah. So it's like, it's fine. There's nothing, it doesn't suck or anything like that. But it is interesting.
Looks like a lot of fun. It really does look.
And I kind of wish that the weird sound effects of him being shocked, electrocuted in this panel had been a different color. But I gotta say, their sound effects throughout all the issues are just hilarious. Big and zap.
I like the skeleton effect too. Like that.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's part of why I don't like the white for the electrical sound though, because it kind of blocks that blue. And it's like if it had been a different color, but what color do you make it? Because you've got the yellow shock. You don't want to make it yellow, obviously. You don't want it too dark. So I understand the choice. But I think what I would have done was I would have probably put a border around the letters, a black border around the letters instead of just having it to maybe do a little bit of jaggedness to it to make it look like electrical lettering or something. But it's not the worst thing in the world.
And then, of course, on the right, you've got a nice shot of Morgana.
Yeah. So pretty cool villains and pretty cool overall stuff going on there. Okay, that's pretty much our reviews for this week. And next week, We're not going to have any guests. I don't know if John's going to be here or not. Are you planning on being here next week?
Planning on it.
Okay. So we're going to address what 2025 will look like on the channel here. And we're going to go and review Epitaphs from the Abyss, Gotcha Man June, Apex Heart, which is the one shot featuring the female character of G-Force from Gotcha Man, Galaxy of Madness, and Batman and Dylan Dog, and more. See you next time on that. Before we leave, I want to thank my guests, Randyl, for being here, Randyl Bishop.
Thank you very much for having me. And I just wanted to give a shout out to my family who's done their level best to be quiet downstairs while I do this. And of course, Mick from the Silvers deserves a hearty thanks from me. And Augusta Book Exchange, appreciate your insight and for joining us tonight.
And Randyl, it was nice to meet you.
Very nice meeting you, sir.
And I'm trying to get this silly thing to do what it's supposed to do, and it's not wanting me to do it, of course. There we go. Now, there was a second outro that you guys never really got to see, so we're going to do that. But if you have any questions on how to reach me at quotetherravenlbr72@gmail.com. If you have questions for John, do Greg Figaro at hotmail.com. Do you have any that was someone else wanting to do another video. Of course, you can reach Randyl
either one's fine. I've got timebound.co and then the one that's on the screen. And if you need to email me, rbishop@timebound.co. And then, if we're Facebook friends already, I accept friend requests all the time. So send me a Facebook message or find Hawk of New York Official on Instagram.
Okay. Let me see if I can find that again. I know we put that up there. There you go. There it is again.
Thank you.
All right, folks. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow night. My guest will be Bobby Nash, and Chris Hall will be returning as well to talk about Doom Patrol, HBO Max series, and they'll also talk about the Doom Patrol series from last year, Unstoppable Doom Patrol, because it plays off of the TV show in a way. So we'll talk about that as well. Until then, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Quoth the Raven, Lewis Bright Raven.
Stay vigilant.